Good evening and welcome to Inspire to Achieve Global TV. And thank you for joining me here in the Executive Suite. I'm your host, Roxanne St. Clair, and I am delighted to be with you here again on this Monday evening. But if wherever you are in the world, it could be morning or afternoon. So welcome and thank you for joining. Now, it's beginning of the week, and I always like to ask you that question. How has your week started? Has it started as you intended it to, or has it been totally different to your expectations? So, as per usual, like, comment, and share because this is an interactive show. This isn't just about me talking and talking and talking. This is about us interacting and enjoying our time together, engaging, helping each other, supporting each other, sharing ideas. So, like, comment, and share, invite your friends to come and join. Tell them about what we do here in the Executive Suite. The Executive Suite is a space where you come to release the pressures that you may be dealing with, to reconnect with your vision, your plan, your mission, so that you can actually get recharged and go out and do the things that you love. And whilst we're here, we've just started the show, so I'm going to invite a few people in to join us. So, how was your week? How's your week started? I was about to say, how's your week been? You may not have even started your work week as yet. So what's going on for you at the moment? What's special for you? And again, it's the 1st of October today, so it's the beginning of a new quarter. It's actually the beginning of the last quarter of the year. So, how do you want your year to end? Because you may have seen my post that I put out a little while ago that says that, many a great game has been won in the last quarter. So although we've already had 9 months of the year, it's not too late to make 2018 a really special year. It's not too late for you to have that really big win. So how will you end 2018? What can you achieve in this last quarter of 2018? So as I said, bear with me. I'm just going to invite a few people in to join. So I will just share this broadcast and let's see who else we can get on today and really have a good invigorating conversation so that we can help each other, we can grow together, we can share some business ideas. So where shall I see now? Okay, so I've just shared my post there and let me share again. And let's get some people involved in this conversation because when we share and grow together, we can move so much faster. And if you're in business, you're starting out in business, you know the importance of having a group of your peers to elevate each other and work together. And today, what I'm really going to talk to you about, so excuse me for not looking at you at the moment, but I am inviting more people in. What I'd like to talk to you about today is really around systems and why systems are important. So, right, let's kick this off with systems. And as I said, that today's topic is why are systems so important? And systems are, well, everything we do in life, we really have a system. So although you may not actively be thinking, oh, what system am I using? How am I applying this system? You can guarantee that you do use systems in most walks of your life. Even if we take an everyday process, brushing your teeth, what system do you use? I'm sure you probably hold your toothbrush in a particular hand. You may wet the toothbrush first and then put your toothpaste on. You may put your toothpaste straight up. So if you think about it, when you go to brush your teeth, what steps do you take? Because that's your system. When you're getting dressed, what steps do you take? That's your system. If you're putting on a pair of trousers, for example, do you put your left leg in first? Do you put your right leg in first? All of these things are these ingrained systems that we have that we've probably had from childhood that we continue to use without really thinking about it because it's become automatic. So some of the best systems are the automatic systems because you're not having to think too hard about what you're doing. Hi, Inspired to Achieve colleague. And who are you? What? Share your initials so I know which one of my colleagues are online at the moment. Thanks for joining. So, as I say, we have these ingrained systems within us that we use them without really thinking because they've been sunk into our subconscious that they just become our natural way of being. And hi, Marcia. Thanks for joining. So that is the beauty of a well put together system. You're not having to think, you can just perform. And so if you apply this to your business or to your work and you create systems in which you can work with, then you see already there's an acronym that you may be familiar with is by having a system, you save yourself time, energy, and money. Because if you're not constantly thinking about how do I do this, but you're actually doing and then leading to a result, can you see how you're saving yourself time, energy, and money? But if you went to do something, so say, as we were talking before, we go to brush your teeth for a simple example. If you had to think about, oh, what hand should I put my toothbrush in? There's time gone. Whereas your automatic system, you would just go and pick that toothbrush up. So you've saved yourself some time there. If you then think, oh, do I put water on first or do I put toothpaste on first? That's time again because you're having to think about it. Whereas if you're in your normal ingrained system, you automatically, so whatever I know for myself, I get my toothbrush, I wet the toothbrush first, then I put my toothpaste on, then I actually wet the toothpaste, and then I brush my teeth. So what's your system around brushing your teeth? And next time you go to do it now, you probably will actually look and think about, oh, what am I doing? Because we've just had this dialogue about the system that you use to brush your teeth. So it's the same thing with work, with business. What's your system? Now, Marcia, you're on. For example, when you go to make your jewelry, I dare say you have a system, whether or not you've written it down, you have a system that you follow in order to, say, make a pair of earrings. Now, if you're, do you get your materials together, for example, and lay everything out in the order that you need it, and then you start making, or does it evolve as you're making? So do you have one piece and then think about, oh, this will go nice with that piece. So then you add something else. And then you think, oh, let me change the color. I'll go and look for that. So again, there is a form of a system there. It may not be written down, but it's how you go about that process. Now, the value in having it written down is, and I know, Marcia, you'd like to expand, is if you want to then get a team on board for them to start making the jewelry for you, how do you instruct them in how to make the jewelry? Okay, yeah, so Marcia, how do you instruct them in how to make the jewelry if you want to bring people on board to work with you? Are you going to sit there each time they go to make something, assuming that they're in the same vicinity as you, and then instruct them what to do? Or are you going to have it written down so that you can say to somebody, okay, I want a coconut shell pair of earrings and I want it to look like this. And then this is my process. So they can just go off and make them. Or if you've already got an example to show them, you can say to them, okay, I want you to make a pair of earrings like this. Now, they either have to look at that prototype that you've given them to then think about, what did she do? What did she put on? But if you've got it written down in your system schedule or your process schedule or your design schedule, they know that, well, they need, thank you. They know that they need one piece of the coconut shell. They may need, an inch long piece of chain. They may need a hook. They may need a stopper. So there's all these things that will be written down ready for them. So they have all that laid out ready. And all they then have to do is put it together to get the finished product. If they need to have a bag to put it in when they finish, if they need to have some ribbon to tie the bag, all these things, if it's all written down, that's your system. And then it's quicker for them to just go and do. They're not having to think about what they need to do in order to make what it is you want them to make. So I hope that that makes sense and shows a practical value in having a system. Right, so yeah, so as it says here, written would be much more progressive and helpful. So that is a prime example of why systems are so important. And we can take it for granted, especially if we're the only one doing something, that it's not a system, but it is, because you have a set way of doing your role, doing your job, doing whatever you do. Even if it's not the quickest way so far, it's your set way. So by having a system in place, it actually creates order. And as I've just given you that example of creating order. And by having order, straight away, you could probably see now how it saves you time, energy, and money. Oh, great. I'm glad that this is helpful, because this is the idea of this program, to really give you practical help and advice to make your life simple. Because I like to be known as the Queen of Simple, because for me, life can be very simple, but as people, we tend to make it complicated. So if we can get everything we do down to its simplest form, and that gives us time and the energy to focus on the things that we really want to be doing, or even if we like what we're doing, because we've got a system around it, we can do more of it. And that's the whole idea of the executive suite, is how do we make our lives as simple as possible but effective? So, when I work with my clients and I'm consulting with them, it's about how can I make their lives simple and effective so that they can have the time to be with their families, to go on their holidays, to do more of what they love to do. And that's what I'm sharing with you here on the executive suite. So let me see some of... Okay, I like that. So it's only as I've described it that you realize that you have a system already. So you have a system in how you make or you deliver what you have to deliver. But you see how a lot of what we do is ingrained, and we do not see the value of it as a system. So can you now imagine if you had that written down and that as a formula, and for all the different aspects of what you do, you start seeing how what you do is systematic. You might start to see how certain things link together, but also now, if you want to now bring people on board to help you, can you see how it would be so much easier for you to instruct them as to what to do? And I'm sure I've got something here around that in terms of, I didn't put that in, but in terms of making things easy to explain. Because if you start thinking about the processes and what you do, and then as you start to write them down, you realize, this is my system, this is how I do things. So therefore, you can then explain it to others, and it makes your life so much easier. But also it makes it easy for them, because if they don't understand part of that system, they can then ask you questions, and there'll be valuable questions based on their understanding and your explanation. Whereas if you're just talking about things, sometimes what you think you're saying, but what people hear you saying can be quite different. So that's why I personally feel that systems are so important. And I know that when I approach anything, I'm always seeing it as a system, because my mind is quite methodical. So if you're talking to me about something that you do, already in my head, I'm plotting it out to say, well, okay, this is how it works. This is the process. This is what it will go through. And this is what it will look like. So I can give you an example about today. I don't know if you saw the live that we did earlier on this afternoon, but a few of us went down to the new venue that we'll be hosting our event in February. And we spent quite a bit of time with the events team looking at the room, bearing in mind that the room wasn't set up anything like it will be when we have our event. But we went round the whole space with them, looking at the different access points, looking at the location of the stage, of the seating, of the registrations. We went through everything with them. But we were able to do that because we all had an idea of what the process would be to run the events. So we could walk through the whole process as we're speaking to the events team to really start to visualize what it will look like and what it will feel like on the day when all our guests come and we're welcoming everybody and we're sharing and just so forth. But it took some time to do. However, it became quite clear because we were able to discuss it. We had the plans, so we could see on the plans where things would be. And it's through having the process and a system in mind, although everything wasn't written down, we could actually start to build on and almost, semi-plan the event and what we'd be doing when we get there. So when we get there in February, we're not having to reinvent anything because we've got our system in place to say, okay, this is what we want to have. This is how we will build on it. This is where things will be located. This is who we need to have on board. These are the roles that people need. So it's now something that we can build on, and then we can then share with people what our requirements are. We're not having to now go and reinvent the wheel. And that is the beauty of having a system. It actually helps you to keep things simple because you've actually got a structure in place. And when you have a structure in place, life becomes so much easier. Think about it with a house. If you're going to build a house, don't all houses have a structure? You start with the foundations because you have to have that foundation. It has to be strong. It has to be stable. And then you build up on the foundations. But there's a process involved in order to build the house. There's certain things that have to be put in before others. Otherwise, you may have the frame of the house, but you may not have electrics in there. You may not have plumbing in there. You may not have gasworks in there. You may not have a roof. So may not have windows. So there's a process and a structure and an order in which you build your house. It's the same thing with everything that you do. If you can create a structure and system around it, your mind is freer because you're not having to think about everything all the time. You're not thinking about the same things all the time. Because can you imagine, as I mentioned before, if every time you went to brush your teeth, you had to think about what the next step was, what the next process was, it'd be a bit, it'd be quite tiring just going to brush your teeth. So let me look at some of your messages here. Yes, Sheldon, that's true. February will be a manifestation of our system and of a dream. I agree with that, definitely. Okay, so someone else is saying the venue looks great. So yes. Now, look who else we have. Oh, wow. Okay, Marcia, so you're saying, do you think you actually have several systems? So you already have several systems according to what style of jewelry. So you've got hand-painted system, wood burning. Brilliant. So, Marcia, my suggestion to you is you now sit down and think about all of them and start to write it down. Because if your business is going to grow and expand, as I just explained to you, if you've now got this written down, you're already building up your handbook of how the system goes. So when you've got your team working with you, you can give them that to do, knowing that they will follow your way of doing things. And your mind could then be more on the strategic side of the business as opposed to the practical side of the making. And you would probably just go in and then do the quality checks. So I'm glad that's been of use to you. But, as I said to you, sometimes we do things and it's subconscious because it's ingrained in us, but we're not seeing the value of it as a system. And I know a lot of creative people, for example, are more in the doing, but then don't always systemize what they do or realize that they have a system. So therefore systemizing what they do in order to get the result that they want to get or to be able to scale what they're doing. So there's another. Hi, May. Thank you for joining us. So again, it's about scalability. And if you want your business to expand and grow, if you yourself identify and realize that you have a system, then you can actually make it repeatable. And that's where you then get scalability because you're not physically having to be there doing everything because you've handed over the instructions to somebody else that they can get that part of the business done for you. And you can then do the overview. So I'm glad this is helpful to you. And that's the whole idea. We said when we have a conversation here in the executive suite, it's about how we help each other, how we share our skills, our knowledge, our advice, our way of doing things that could help somebody else. And therefore you then can be recharged and energized to go off, just do what it is you want to do. So let me see if there's anything on here that I haven't mentioned explicitly. So yeah, and yeah, because again, you've probably gained now where I was talking to. Hi, Bradley. Thanks for joining. You probably now can see why I titled today's show about why a system's so important, just because of the fact that you then have the ease around what it is you're doing and you're offering. So in a work scenario, for me, with working with, say, finance and accounts, if I'm going to do a month end, there's a particular order in which I like to do things. So I ensure, for example, that I've got all invoices have been put onto the system. Thanks for sharing, Bradley. So I ensure that all invoices have been put on the system. I ensure that all of the banking records have been updated, because if you can have the invoices on, but if you're not showing that they've been paid, then there's going to be a discrepancy in your books. So when you've got all of that on, then you have to reconcile to make sure that things aren't missed, because you may match things in the wrong places. So I'm getting a bit technical here, but it's just to show you that where you have the system and the structure of how you do something, you just do it automatically, and it's a lot quicker because you're just running through. Say yes, tick, that's been done. Yes, tick, that's been done. And then you go on to the next step. Tick, that's been done. On to what's the next step, so that you can then put a time frame around how long you think it's going to take you to get your task finished, so that you can then meet, if you've got a deadline, you can meet your deadline. And that's the other thing, actually, where I've just said to you with the timing frame. So Marcia, let's come back to you with your jewelry making. So how, and again, respond, let us know, because, for example, do you know how long it takes you to make, say, a pair of earrings? Like, I know different types may take different length of time, but how long does it take you to make a pair of earrings? Each stage of that process, do you know how long each stage takes you? Because this is also something that when you pass out the job to somebody else now to start producing that for you, you know how long it should take them to produce a pair of earrings for you. So these are the things where, again, having a system in place that's giving you structure but also creating order, it means that you can then gauge the timings, so you can then gauge the costings. Because take, for example, if you're paying somebody by the hour and you know that it should take them 20 minutes to make one pair of earrings, so therefore you're expecting them to have made you 3 pairs. Now, if the hour's gone and they've only just made the one, straight away it's costing you 3 times as much to get one pair of earrings made. So without you having that in place to know what the timing should be, you're going to pay that 3 times as much for the labor. Whereas if you give it to them and you say, right, this is a process, it should take you X amount of time to get a pair done, so therefore I'm expecting 3 pairs in that hour. So when they come up and give you 1 pair, it's like, well, what's happened? What was the problem? So 1, it's either a case of they didn't follow your system, or 2, they had a problem whilst they were following the system, and there may be there may be something in there that needs to be tweaked, so that when you get more people on board, there's a particular issue for some people, and that needs to be addressed, so that when subsequent people come on board, that is no longer an issue. Which is why I say, when you have a system, you save yourself time, energy, and money. So let me see some more messages that are coming in here now. I'll have to share that one. Thank you, Bradley. Amazing lessons always on the Executive Suite with Roxanne St. Clair. Thank you. So, right. So again, Bradley's saying timings v how effective and productive your day and your business is. Yeah, and it is, it's quite important to have those timings and to know what your efficiencies are. And I was saying earlier, Bradley, in terms of a lot of us, first of all, if we start out, as entrepreneurs or one-man band, as we want to expand to become scalable, where we have a system and we have something written down as our template, we're able to pass that on to people that we take on board to do a job. But by handing it to them so that they can fulfill the role, what it also does is gives us a gauge on how long it takes to get the job done. So if people aren't able to produce the level of work that we expect in the time frame we expect, we know there's a problem somewhere and we can deal with it quite effectively and therefore move on and still scale and grow the business. But if we haven't got anything written down and we ourselves aren't sure how long it should take to get the job done, and in this example with Marcia and her jewelry making, we were saying it, for example, it may take 20 minutes to make a particular style of earring, and her people, if they can't make it in that time, is it that she's just super brilliant? Or is there a problem in the system that needs to be addressed in order to make it more efficient and effective? And yeah, I remember years ago when they were doing training and they used to train you in accounts, etc. They would have you look at a production line and they would look at efficiencies of a production line, and you'd have to assess, it was like I'm trying to think of the exact term we used to use, but because they do things like absorption costing. So how much of a resource does each stage of the process take? So this resource we're talking about is time, but that time is what's costing you money. So these are things to consider as you're looking to grow your business. Because when you first start out, you may not be as efficient, and it may sort of start out as a hobby. Thank you, Stephen, for sharing. It may have started out as a hobby, but as you get serious about your business, to fine tune it, you have to have systems in place. Because if you haven't got systems in place, you can be all over the place. So that's one of the reasons why I say systems are very important. And what was I going to share with you actually? Yeah, that was the other thing, because the other thing was sometimes when you having people to do a job with you or for you, some people like to talk around the issue without getting the job done. Now, I had a meeting last week and we were actually meeting for a big event that we're planning. And we were looking at putting together the floor plans for this event. Now, bearing in mind, it's an event that's taking place over 3 floors in quite a large venue. We're expecting to have, up to 100 independent stall holders. And then we'll have between 1,000 and 1,600 members of the public coming in for the event. Now, the idea was that 4 of us meet up, look at the floor plan and allocate spaces to the various stall holders. Now, we've got at least half of the stalls will be for some influential people who get priority, and then we fit in other people as well. Now, we had last year's information, which was a bit sketchy, and we had the information from a few years before, which was the last time I had actually put the floor plan. And that last time I did it all by myself. But it was quite interesting in terms of, before we even got around to doing it, the conversation that was taking place about, it was all about the semantics rather than just getting in to do the job. Now, being somebody who's very much in terms of keeping it simple, as far as I'm concerned, is who have you got on the list? Where were they before? Do they have a preference? If they haven't got a preference, they liked where they were, right, fine, we know we can allocate them to the same place. Then we know what spaces we've got. Who else is there? Where else can we allocate them that's sufficient and appropriate for them? Job done. Half an hour went by, and I think we'd probably just looked at 2 out of this list. Now, trying to be diplomatic without losing my top, it was one of those scenarios where I had to turn around and just say, well, okay, fine, we know all the niceties, we don't want to upset anybody, but can we get on and get the job done, and let's just go through your list. You get to that stage where you're trying not to pull the list away from someone so you can just get on with the job. But it was, I was gritting my teeth. So we got there and we got through, but guaranteed time was running out. And this is a case where, talking around something rather than just getting on and get the job done. Now, had there been something written that said, okay, when you're doing the floor plans, you do A, B, C, D, da, 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 da. There would have been no need for that half an hour discussion that delayed us from getting the stalls allocated. And so again, just even in something that could be simple becomes quite complex. And when you're running a big business, you haven't really got time to spend loads and loads of time going backwards and forwards over the simple things, because then how do you get the complex things done? So these are some of the things to think about as you're growing your business, or as you're growing a team, or as you're in your department. What are some of the processes and structures that you can actually get written down so that you keep people on point and keep people on target? And thank you, Stephen. You have a blessed day too. And I'm great that you're actually joining us on the platforms. And so I'm looking forward to your first broadcast on the platform, Stephen. So watching out for you. So, this is, I can't stress enough how important systems are, because when you start working from that place of, okay, what do I do? How do I put them in place? That's when you really realize how much freedom you then create for yourself. So I'm just going to look at a few more messages here. What have we got? So we've got new ones there. And Stephen's joined us from Sarasota in Florida. So we've got Florida in the house today. We've got Essex. We've got London. Where else are people joining us from today? Right, let's see. And May, I think you're out of London as well. So thank you for joining. Okay, so yeah, Sheldon, with February will be the manifestation of our system and the dream. Definitely. Okay, lovely. Okay, great. Okay, so yeah. So again, what okay, so and here's our project management guru here, who's saying that all successful organizations have systems or policies in place. And it is true. And I know in organizations before, I've had to go through and actually create and write processes for departments, for projects, so that everybody knows what they need to do. I know when I was at Visa quite a few years ago, one of my first roles was to look at the cost studies that we used to do. And that's where we used to go out to different countries and go to the banks to analyze their credit card and debit card programs, to look at the costing structure behind them and how it worked within the particular country, and to ensure that the fee structure between the acquiring banks and the issuing banks was appropriate for their markets. And one of my first roles was to sit down and look at what is the process that we follow as a team when we're going out and doing our cost studies. And I then had to design the document that actually got handed to new members of the team when they were coming on board to then take part in doing these studies. And it was an interesting process. Can you imagine when you're relatively new in the role, you're still learning the role, but you're the one that has to go out and write the process. So I was like, yeah, it was fun. But it was actually a really good exercise to do, because that meant that when I was out in the field and working with the banks in their respective countries, because I'd done that and I'd been through a process, I had it, so I knew what I was looking for. So whether I spoke their language or not, I knew what I was looking for. I knew what I wanted it for. So I was able to think ahead. And it's the same thing with if you bring somebody on board as part of a team. So as I mentioned today, we went out to look at the venue for our event in February. Now, because we've gone through that process today to look at where we want things located, who we need to have on board, what's going to happen when we now bring people on our team, and we are looking for crew members who want to come and work with us and have that awesome experience, we know what we need them to do. We know what our expectations are. We know the locations we need them to be in. So it will be so much easier for us to say, okay, this team, for example, they will be meeting and greeting guests and they need to be located here. This is what they need to be looking for. This is what they need to say. This is what they need to ensure the guest experience. So this, again, makes life easy. So it should ease confusion on the day, because there's nothing worse than getting somewhere and people are having to think, oh, what should we do? What do I do here? What do I do there? When you've got that all in place and the structure's there, then things flow and they move with ease. And this is, again, the praise that I have for having worked through systems and having processes so that people know what they need to do. Now, I find this in planning meetings. Have you ever been to a meeting and they've had no agenda? And people are just sitting there wondering what they're going to discuss. But if you go to a meeting and there's an agenda, and everybody knows what that agenda is, you can work to that agenda. And even if people go off at a tangent, you can bring them back to the agenda, especially if your meeting has got a certain time frame attached to it. And if most agendas have an any other business at the end. So it's easy to then say to people, okay, let's pick that up in any other business, but let's go back to the agenda. So again, that's where you've got your structure and you're able to keep order and keep in line, again, saving yourself time. So this is the beauty of having the system. So just checking, making sure there's no more messages here. And I need to keep an eye on the time. Oh, wow, time's really catching up with us today. So yeah, in view of that, I think I'll wrap it up there, because I feel that you now get the gist of what we're talking about in having systems. So I'll just do a quick recap. And that quick recap is really just to say that, the benefits of having a system and a robust system is that it gives you order. It ensures that you have a structure to work to. And then once you've got it and you've created it once, it becomes your template for how you do anything. And as we mentioned before, in our day-to-day life, from a very early age, we create our own internal systems which become ingrained in us. So the way that you brush your teeth, the way that you get dressed, even the way that you cook, you probably have an order in which you do things when you're cooking. So these are all ingrained systems, and we don't always think about the fact that we're using a system, but they are. So how you go about doing your job is probably a system. And if you were to think about the process that you use, could you take note of that and realize that this is what I do and this is how I do it? So if you then have to pass it on to somebody else, or you need somebody else to help you out, and you have that, it becomes so much easier to pass that on and to get your results. So, and Sheldon's put in another message to say, use a system to plan success or a positive result. Thank you, Sheldon. So, this is where I'm tying it up. If for no other reason you want to actually have more time and ease, then that's why it's beneficial to write down your way of doing things, your system for doing whatever you do. So when you go to scale your business up or to build a team, giving them a guideline from which they can work from, then frees you up to look at more of the strategy, because you're not having to handhold, you're not having to be there all the time. You're just going in then to do the quality check, to do the reassurance that what you expected and what you requested has been delivered, as opposed to two of you sitting side by side and you constantly having to watch over somebody in order to get that job done. Because come on, you may as well be doing it yourself then, if you're going to be sitting with someone every time they go to do the job. So I hope that's been useful for you today, and that you start looking at what you do in terms of the systematic way that you do things, so that you can see it. What you may find is that as you write it down and look at it, you may see that where you can actually make your own improvements. So, but without having that template or that framework to look at, how do you get to make the tweaks and know where you can actually create more efficiencies for yourself? And if you want to discuss systems with me more about structure, processes, then do get in contact either with me via Facebook, via Messenger. That's my website there. You can go onto the website, send me a message. I think Facebook's probably the best way. We're connected on here anyway. Best way to contact me. And we can always have a further conversation around systems, processes. If there's anything you wanted to discuss, we can see if I can help you on that. And as always, it's been a pleasure being with you. So thank you for joining me this evening. I'm back with you on Friday evening at 8 p.m., which I'm looking forward to. But in the meantime, have a fabulous week. And I hope that you've now got in mind what you want to achieve for the week and just keep going for it and stay awesome. We should very soon have more links for you should you wish to come to the SME Media Awards on the 17th and 18th of November. The web address is going along at the bottom of the screen at the moment. So do check it out. Have a look, see what we're about, see what we're doing. And you may even qualify for one of our media awards. So why not nominate yourself and come along, or even bring your team along? And if you know other people that would be a good idea for them to come along, invite them to come also, because the more the merrier. And this is going to be such a special event. It's an annual event. And to always come into the first of anything, it's special. So if you can say that you were at the very first one, can you imagine in years to come when you've got all your trophies and people will talk about it even more? You were at the first one. So book your ticket, come along, have some fun. And in the meantime, I look forward to connecting with you again on Friday, right here in the Executive Suite, where we can have some more dialogue, we can share, we can help each other, and we just keep growing and building. So thank you for joining me tonight, and stay awesome. Bye for now.